Let's discuss the implication of these Chinese curbs. Anurag Singh, managing partner at Ansid Capital, is joining us. Great to have you back with us. Anurag, do tell us, as far as Chinese curbs go on these metals, on gallium and germanium, it seems like a tit-for-tat move because it came close on the heels of America deciding that it's not going to pass on advanced technology to China as easily as it did in the past. Technology that would help develop artificial intelligence, for one. But as far as Chinese curbs go on these two metals, how much could it actually hurt a Chinese economy that's struggling to find its feet after the pandemic?
Vikram, I think it is less to do with Chinese domestic economy. Eventually, I think that has to find its own path, because we need to understand it has a base of 15 to 18 trillion, depends on what estimates you take. But I think it is becoming more a question of retaliation. And we know, a lot of these business leaders have been to China in the recent past, and Defense Secretary Blinken was there. Now Madam Yellen is there to visit China. I think it might be a bargaining chip, because understand semiconductor wars are already underway. China is a big consumer of semiconductor as well as a big supplier, right? So there is dependence there. The challenge is that China manufactures low-end semiconductors, whereas all the high-end equipment semiconductor chips come from, the technology comes from US. Now this whole effort of US and China to block this semiconductor technology, US and European Union to block this technology to China and Chinese companies, is kind of becoming a difficult path for China. And so that's the tit for tat. These two metals, broadly about 90 to 95% supply comes from China. It's not that others cannot make these metals, but they will have to find them, and it'll be expensive. And in the short term, if somebody controls 90%, well, you can imagine what the scenario is likely to be. I'm sure there are going to be some negotiations, but it is China's shot at disrupting the market that, look, you are also dependent on us, so let the flow of technology come in. It might, although, have an opposite impact, Vikram. I think it might end up, escalating those, those thoughts of de-risking from China. And I think that's ultimately going to be the result here, Vikram.
In fact, that is going to be a concern that the Chinese would have right now. But even so, in the interim, how much of a shake-up do you see in the commodity universe on the back of these Chinese curbs on these two metals? And how much is that going to shake up the markets as well?
So in the commodity market for these two, big shake-up, Vikram, right? Of course, I mean, if somebody controls 95%, other places, European Union, US, I mean, they will have to pass the laws in the Congress which will allow the mining of these metals to take place, because I understand all of these European Union and US, they are they're on a path of environment friendliness, and then they haven't even permitted the mining of these metals. So it's a long way. So in the next 2 years, it will get disrupted. Because we might recall also that, just about 4 years back, there were some similar negotiations with China on, Huawei used to use the Android platform from Google, and there were these semiconductors that Huawei used. It manufactured only 10%, and it used to consume overall 40%. I think so. Those that time also this discussion got heightened, but eventually there was a pathway which was found. Because I think even now, if the world needs to find a path, it needs to give China some space. China is increasingly understanding that world is trying to kind of isolate China or de-risk from China. It doesn't want that in the short run. So I think some of that will happen. Also, I think keep in mind, Chinese EV companies are trying in a big way, to enter other places. And, while Tesla is there in China, but EV is a big push. And I think that war for EVs and to convert everything into electric by 2030, that might take a hit, if this hobnobbing goes on for the rare earth. Not only this, but even other rare earth. It is important to note that these cobalt and lithium, 50% of the supply comes from China. It's very, very significant, right? And without these two metals, you can't make EV cars. So even that's on the table. Ultimately, on the effect on markets, Vikram, I think, well, for now, the semiconductor stocks will be hit, but they have gone up anyways without, any other support from the larger economy. So I think they will cool down and they need to cool down. But other sectors of the economy, I think this longer narrative of China +1, China +7, I think all that will continue. Indian markets will continue to do fine. US markets, I think semiconductors do need to cool down. So I think that will be a big help.
So you expect a small shake-up as far as the industry, which of course, when it comes to semiconductors, we've had a period of struggle. Do you see anything like that emerge, even for a short bit, where there might be shortage of supply because of the lack of availability of these two metals?
So it depends, Vikram, what comes out of the discussion. If Madam Yellen goes there in this visit, what they can come out. My sense is still that there might be some concessions on both sides eventually if this has to work, right? So, well, you have to give it to China that they have, they pull the right strings, at the right time, and they have the force to do that. But my sense is a solution would be found in the near term. I'm sure there is enough mutual dependence for both countries on each other. Increasingly, Vikram, I think we should not be alarmist about it. You'll be surprised. I mean, we're not counting, but I think there are some 7 or 10 good business leaders who have visited China in the recent past. Musk was there, Jamie Dimon was there, GM Mary Barra, she was there. There are ample number of business leaders who have been there. And I'm just trying to pull up some list, but I think almost everybody who matters in the last few months have been to China, right? So it is all about making this relationship work. Vikram, the sense is, versus last year where people were saying, oh, China is, we'll have to just kind of pull capacities from China. The current effort is that there is a mutual dependence. We can't work without each other. Let us make this relationship work. And that's
Right.
when all these business leaders, almost
Indeed.
everybody who Goldman Sachs chief, he was there, Blinken was there, I said about it.
Yes.
Pat Gelsinger, Intel, he was there, right? So almost all business leaders were there. So effort is to
Absolutely,
make
Anurag. When you talk about political rhetoric, a lot of that will be flying about because certain statements are made. But when it comes to business, a lot of people argue that it turns out to be business as usual. And we'll see exactly how that plays out in this particular case as well, where tit-for-tat curbs have been imposed. How the negotiations happen is something we'll be watching very closely. Anurag Singh, always a pleasure getting your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us on the Rush Hour.